Hi, my name's Kevin McNulty, and I'm here to do a testimonial. And honestly, it's more than that. Just a great big thank you to Ed Norwood and the ERN Enterprises, and frankly, specifically Inez Villalobos. Um, they they took over a case for my daughter, and I'm going to let her talk here in just a second. That with regard to her health care and insurance, and it really set mostly her sideways. But of course, as her dad, it had the risk of turning my wife and I sideways in a lot of ways, and I'll just explain the situation. But anyway, so this is my daughter, Christina McNulty. And Christina, you know, uh, can you first just talk about, the accident that you had out in California?
Yeah, so basically I do seasonal work for a living. So I change jobs about every 6 months. Usually in a different location, a different state. And this time I was in California, and I moved there to have a mountain biking season. And my first ride out, I got too excited and flipped over and broke my collarbone um, pretty bad, and I had to be evac'd off the trail, and I went straight to the ER, and I knew right away it was broken. It was a pretty nasty accident. And
Yeah, you had only been there, and you went there to do some work with like the state parks or something like this, right?
I went to go work with an outdoor school. It wasn't with the state parks, but it was a nonprofit.
I see.
So I went to work at. I mostly work in outdoor education. So I was teaching outdoor education and environmental education to fifth and sixth graders,
Okay.
um, who would stay over the course of 4 days to a week,
And I
and sit there to learn. And
and
sorry, and
I think it's important to this conversation because what we're talking about to let them know that you weren't there making a boatload of money.
oh no, no, I do mostly yeah, I do mostly environmental education. So I'm teaching students and adults more about conservation and about the environmental world, and these things are really rewarding in a spiritual way, but not really in a monetary
Yeah,
way.
fair enough. Okay, so you had your accident, you broke your collarbone, they evac you, and you went straight to the emergency room. They took a an X-ray. They figured out that you had a broken collarbone, and then I think the physician recommended that you go see a surgeon, right?
Yeah, so it was a pretty wacky day in the ER. I was pretty disoriented, but yeah, it was a bad break. So basically, they were like, "Yeah, it's for sure." Like my collarbone, like from the middle, was basically sticking straight up. It was
Oh,
completely severed. I
mm,
know.
yeah,
And the other part of my collarbone was straight, and then
yeah,
the first part was up like that.
yeah.
And the I didn't get that much information in the moment in the ER, but basically the doctor was like, "Yeah, it's pretty bad. It might need surgery. So I'd like you to talk to orthopedic and get it kind of assessed."
Okay. So then the
Um,
next day, is that when you went to the orthopedic surgeon?
it was something like in the next couple days. Yeah, I
Okay.
think I think that the doctor called me first to set
Right.
up an appointment. I think my doctor contacted him. I think the orthopedic called me
Oh,
because
okay.
the ER told him that
I see.
it was really bad. And so they called me and we set it up, and they needed to see me immediately for it to, like, if I did need surgery, they would have to do it immediately for it to,
Okay.
work.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, and I went in a few days later, and that was the first time I actually saw the x-ray and it was crazy. And basically he said that I pretty much needed surgery, like guaranteed, because the bone was basically, it was really far up, and it was really severed in a weird way. Like basically without surgery, there was a chance it could heal, but it was it was a big chance that it wouldn't heal correctly because it was so overlapped that it would either heal not fully.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. It would heal either not fully, like it wouldn't align properly, or it would just develop tissue instead of the bone forming back.
Yeah.
Or it might just not connect at all.
Yeah.
A non-union. So he was like, there's a pretty big chance that if you just let it heal, which is what a lot of people with collarbone accidents do, but he was like, yours is so bad, there's a big percentage that 30 or 40% that it won't heal correctly.
And not to mention, of course, it healing as correctly as possible is important to you because of the type of work that you do. And you know, it's not like you're not there's of course anything wrong with office work, but you were not going, you're into very physical work, and so it's important.
That's not my field. Is outdoor education and also farming, and I do a lot of outdoor, and all of my recreational activities are also outdoor. You know, all the things that I enjoy doing are also outdoor sports. So it was really freaky to me thinking about it not healing properly and how that would like completely change my life. So naturally I didn't want to take the risk.
Absolutely. Okay. So then you decided to go ahead with the surgery.
Yeah, I called my insurance. I think I might have called them. I'm pretty sure I called them before the consultation surgeon. I told them the situation. It was out of network because I was in a different state, but that's why I called them, is to tell them the situation and tell them, you know, what was going on, and be like, you know, will you cover this because of everything? It's, you know, the entire situation. And they were basically like, yeah, like given what you've told me, we'll cover it. And while I was at the orthopedic for the consultation, I was really, you know, maybe it was a gut instinct. I was really nervous about it not being covered. And I talked to the doctor, and I talked to the doctor's assistant, and she called my insurance and she talked to them, and they were like, okay, they're going to cover it, but we have to do it in the hospital. So I'm going to schedule you to have the surgery in the hospital instead of like in their orthopedic.
Which kind of puts it back into network or something like that, right? Or
yeah, it was supposed to. Well, she talked to my insurance personally, and she said that they would cover it if it was in the hospital. So that's why I did there.
Okay, so you had the surgery, and then what?
Yeah, so I had the surgery, and I think I asked people, you know, several times. I was like, okay, this is going to be covered, right? And everybody was like, yeah. And then I had the surgery. It was pretty traumatic, and I was out of work for about a week, more than a week, including I was out of work since the accident, and then I had the surgery about a week later, and then was out another week for work. And then basically I didn't hear from anybody. I just got a letter in the mail that said, from the hospital, and it said, you know, hey, your insurance isn't going to cover this, so just let us know what your other insurances are and we'll get that covered. And
but you didn't have any other insurances.
No, I didn't have any other insurance. So basically I get that letter in the mail, and I don't think I've ever been as like depressed and anxious in my life as like when I got that letter.
What was the bill for, by the way?
Oh, it was like $40,000 to $45,000. And I got that letter, and, you know, my heart just like sank like out of my stomach. And I'm sure I called you. I'm sure I called Mom, like in a frenzy. Like I was pretty hysterical because I was just like, I couldn't even sit. I couldn't even like, I was just like, my life is over. Like I don't have this money. I'm never gonna have this money. Like I made $16,000 last year. Like I might make 20,000 this year. You know, I'm never gonna have that. It's gonna take me my whole life to pay that off.
Well, and I can say, as your dad, even though we we helped you with your college, we also know that you had to pay for some of your college, and we just knew that from, especially as a college student and as a young woman, you always tried to take care of your money. You always tried to do the right thing. You didn't, you never borrowed money from us, and I mean, you just always tried to do the right thing. And so for you to suddenly wake up, get a letter and say you're now $40,000 in debt, I knew it was devastating. So let me jump in here and just kind of tell you how Ed fell into the fold real quick. So that everybody knows, several weeks before that, it may have even been a couple of months before that, or something like this. I have a podcast, a personal growth podcast, and I had reached out to Ed. I found him on LinkedIn. He had written an incredible book called Giant Killer, and asked if he would be a guest on my show, and he agreed to do that. And I set up the date for a podcast with Ed, and then it was several weeks out yet. And between that time is when you broke your collarbone, and we were all concerned about it. And so I ended up interviewing Ed on my podcast, and I knew. I didn't know anything about Ed, but I had, of course, read up on him a little bit, and I knew that he worked something into the healthcare, but I didn't really pay attention to it because I was interviewing him about his book. And I knew he had a company that dealt with healthcare, and I knew he lived in California, but that's all I knew. So I went through we went through the interview. It was an incredible, really an incredible, inspiring interview. And then after we finished the interview, we stayed online on Zoom. And I said, hey, Ed, I know you're kind of in the healthcare industry. I wonder if I could just ask you a couple of questions, because my daughter had an accident, and she's out in California and having problems with her insurance. And maybe you don't know anything about this, but I just thought, since you're there, maybe you could answer some questions. And he said, so sure. It's very, very delightful about it. And so I explained what you just explained about your accident, and then how the insurance came back and said, oh, by the way, you owe us $40,000. And explained it to him as much as I knew. And he said, Kevin, and he started answering some of the questions, like telling me about California laws and these other sorts of things. And I was like, wow, how do you know so much about this? And he said, Kevin, tell you what, why don't you let us handle this for you? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, Kevin, this is exactly what we do. We help people who have problems with their insurance, and whether they get denied or something like this, especially if it's not the person's fault.
Right.
And I said, you got to be kidding me, Ed. He goes, no, this is exactly what we do. I said, how is this possible? How is it possible that we set up an interview a month ago? My daughter broke her collarbone, had this problem with the insurance company, and this is exactly what you do. I didn't even know people did that, let alone somebody in California who's in his expertise. And and for me, honestly, it was truly a God thing. I mean, it was just like a godsend that this was happening. And I said, well, my goodness, I mean, of course. And so then he put you in touch. I put you in touch with him, and you talked a little bit about it. And then Inez via Lobos took your case and started working. So tell us then a little bit about what happened there from that point on, when he got in touch with you.
So I spoke a lot with Inez, and they basically they had me send all of the documents that I had, all of the ER reports, the letter that I got in the mail from my insurance. I sent them voicemails from my insurance. In this time, I also went through, I think, 2 appeals with my insurance.
By yourself.
One of them, and one of them was like a phone. There was a panel of like 3 or 4 people who were reviewing my case, and I kind of like told them what happened, and I was like, surely it was just a mistake. After I explained that they already said they would cover it, surely they'll be like, oh, but no, it was denied and denied and denied. And so I sent over to Ed and Inez.
And you were quite deflated, I remember, after all of this, because you're, we won't say the name of the insurance company. It was a very big insurance company. And, here you are, a person who does, a season of
Yeah.
work, not making a lot of money, and you got to take on this big giant of a company. And I know that you just
Yeah.
felt hopeless about it, honestly.
Yeah. I was really depressed. I was like I was also trying to recover from my collarbone. I wasn't able to do anything that I enjoyed. I wasn't able to work. I had to transfer to a different position in the company that I went to go work for. Thankfully, they kept me employed, but I couldn't perform the job. So I was trying to deal with that. And then I was really depressed. That's all I can say. I was really, really
So
depressed.
you're in touch with Inez.
Yeah, and I was in touch with her, and first of all, she was so nice, and both she and Ed were so nice, and they called me a lot, and they were very responsive, and via email, just telling me they were just like, just give us everything you have, and we're gonna do everything we can. And I really appreciated that because I felt like my life was over. And so I sent them all these documents. I compiled everything. They were processing it. They were sending it, to different, departments in ERN, and they were asking me questions. And I know Inez started to call people, calling the hospital, calling my surgeon, calling my surgeon's assistant. I know she was, they were obviously calling my insurance, and
She did a boatload of work, didn't she?
she did. I mean, yeah, I know I don't even know all the work she did, because she would just take all of my information and come back, a few days later with an email being like, I spoke to this person, I need this from you, and I'm going to speak to some more people and do some more things. And I just can't even imagine, I just can't even imagine the type of work you have to do to undo this. She was just so patient and so kind, and she gave me some instructions. She was like, because I was starting to get letters from debt collectors, and she gave me a letter that she wrote, and she was like, send this out to everybody, who wants money from you, and basically telling them to cease everything. And she was like, just send this out and I'll be in contact with everybody. And they also got in touch with me about, I think they contacted the state of Tennessee, basically. An investigator reached out to me and was like, I know this is going on and I'm helping investigate it, for the state of Tennessee. And I know Inez talked to the investigator a bit as well. It was a long process.
How long did it go before you got a final result?
My accident happened last January, so January 2022, and I got finally an answer that my insurance was going to cover it in October.
Wow.
I think
I knew it was in the fall. Yeah, something like that.
End of October.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
I just I can't even, I was in Peru at the time doing some volunteering. And you called me, I think, because you called me before I was able to see the email.
Yeah.
And
it's mind blowing. I remember that, and we're not trying to overstate what happened here, but I think it's very, very important to note again, you're not, if I may say it this way, you're not a young person or a young professional who just dismisses your obligation to things. You don't just say,
no,
I'm not anything. So, but the point is that this is partly why it caused you so much stress. And I'm saying this because I know from talking to you. And so and then on top of that, this is a big giant corporation that with a lot of red tape, a lot of lawyers behind them, a lot of everything behind them. And then you have Ed and ERN, and especially Inez, who did all this
Yeah.
really incredible work. And as Ed would say, slayed that giant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, I'm a person like I really tried to do everything right from the beginning. Like from the moment I broke my collarbone, I was trying to do things right. And that's why I was calling my insurance and talking to people, and I was trying to make sure that I was doing this the correct way, not just like stumbling down and doing whatever and saying I'll deal with it later. I tried to proactively do everything right. And that's part of the reason, of course, why it was so devastating, is because I really tried to make sure I was, taking care of my business. And then to hear that they just basically, it sounded like just changed their minds because they can, because they're this huge company and they can change their minds. And it doesn't matter for them, but it like matters for me, for my whole life. Like my whole life would have changed because I had to pay this massive debt off. And I just couldn't even comprehend how my life was going to look to do that. And so then when I was working with Inez and Ed, and then they did all of the work for me. Because I was at my wit's end.
And we didn't know what to do. You didn't know what to do.
I didn't know what to do. I was trying to do everything I could, but I didn't know what to do. And they just handled everything. I just sent them everything. I told them everything I knew, and I gave them all these dates and everything. And they just did I don't know how they just. And then I get this email and this call from you that Cigna's gonna cover it. And I was like, are you serious? Like I was all, like I had faith in them, but I was like, how can you, like, I've tried to appeal this so many times. Like, I don't think they're gonna budge, and this is just gonna be, I don't know. And
so just maybe to wrap it up here, can you just like speak directly to Ed and Inez, ERN Enterprises, and tell them how you feel now, and just, how you feel about what he did for you.
I mean, I just feel just immensely grateful, and just thank you so much. I really can't, I know I've really hammered it, but in this year, I because of what my insurance did, I was probably in the lowest place I've ever been. And I don't think I would have come out of that, because that would have just been how my life continued.
Hanging over your head. Yeah. Like a dark cloud.
Yeah. And so I am just, I just can't express like how grateful I am for everything that you did, and just like saved, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to sound dramatic, but you saved my life as it is. Like my life wouldn't have continued like this without you, and without everything you did. And you worked so hard for me, and I don't know, you didn't even know me. And so I'm just really, really grateful, and I really appreciate it.
Well, and so let me just add, as Christina's dad, again, Christina, she takes care of her own business, and we just tried to help. Not just because we're her parents. I mean, you do that sort of thing as a family member, but we also know that she's a smart person that can handle these things. But the point is we were always engaged with her about what was going on, and we are just aware of all the incredible work that Ed and Inez did. It was super amazing. They encouraged Christina. I'm talking to Inez now. You encouraged Christina. You kept her hopes up, and in the end, you did a ton of work to lift this cloud up from over her and us, to be quite frankly. And so Inez and Ed, thank you so very much for doing this for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So once again, Ed and Inez, who did so much work on the ground, and ERN Enterprises, we thank you so very much, and we approve this message, right?
Yeah.
Do you approve this message?
I approve. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.